I knew the tides had turned the day my new VP stared at my calendar and said, "Looks like someone's got time for pretend classes." His lip curled like I'd just confessed to running a Ponzi scheme in the break room. Meanwhile, I'd just finished a 14-hour sprint fixing his botched product roadmap. But sure, let's pretend my Tuesday night MBA course was the real threat to company morale. Just 6 months before that little gem, I was the poster child for hustle. Literally. They put my face on the company blog, smiling awkwardly under the headline, "Meet Sarah, product manager by day, MBA dreamer by night." The founder, Greg, had called me a future COO in the making. I laughed. He didn't. He meant it. I worked 60-hour weeks, managed a B2B rollout with 3 engineers and a whiteboard missing half its magnets, and still squeezed in late-night finance lectures with my laptop balanced on a laundry basket. Because ambition doesn't wait for ergonomic furniture. By the way, before we go any deeper down this rabbit hole of corporate betrayal and ethically questionable PowerPoints, do me a solid. If you're listening to this and haven't subscribed yet, hit that button. It helps way more than you think. And if you like stories where the underdog plays smarter, not louder, a little light goes a long way. All right, back to the chaos. The trouble started when Greg decided we needed executive maturity. That's startup speak for, I hired a guy who once wore a tie and knows how to say synergy without gagging. Enter Marcus, the new VP of product. He shook everyone's hand like he was handing them a pink slip wrapped in a resume. From day one, he walked around with this thin smile like he smelled something sour but was too polite to mention it. He wore loafers with no socks and used the phrase low-hanging fruit, like it paid him every time. To be fair, I tried. I offered to sync with him on sprint planning, introduced him to the team's rituals, even showed him how to access our internal tools. But Marcus didn't want help. He wanted dominance. His first move? Kill the flexible work policy, said it was a distraction from cohesion. His second? Cancel bi-weekly team retrospectives because high-performing teams don't need therapy. The guy was allergic to collaboration, and especially allergic to smart women who didn't defer to his every idea like it was divine revelation. It didn't take long for my MBA to become his favorite dartboard. At first, it was subtle. Snide comments about moonlighting or splitting focus. Then came the standing meeting where he opened with, "We need to talk about priorities. Sarah, for example, has an outside commitment that's beginning to affect timelines." My jaw clenched so hard I thought I chipped a molar. Nobody said anything. The engineers just looked down at their keyboards like the code would save them. My boss was calling me out, mid-meeting, for, what? Studying at night? But the real kicker? He didn't even know what I was learning. My MBA program wasn't some fluffy, abstract leadership for feelings degree. I was in the trenches. Business modeling, data analytics, financial forecasting. Half the tools I used at work I'd only mastered because of school. And he knew that. He just didn't care. To Marcus, my education wasn't an asset. It was a threat. Proof that I might know more than him. Or worse, think better than him. Still, I kept my head down. I was used to juggling fire. I figured if I worked hard enough, stayed out of his crosshairs, it would pass. I didn't want a war. I wanted my team to ship the damn product without stepping on his ego landmines every 3 seconds. I focused on deliverables, kept my MBA talk outside office hours, and stayed 3 steps ahead of every realignment he pitched in those sterile, jargon-soaked strategy meetings. But Marcus wasn't content with quiet compliance. One afternoon, I caught wind that he'd asked HR to review overlapping academic obligations, whatever that meant. That's when I started saving emails. Not because I thought I'd need them, but because something in my gut shifted. The kind of shift you feel right before a thunderstorm cracks open the sky. I didn't have proof yet, but I could smell it in the air. This wasn't about performance. It was about power. And I was standing in his way. He wanted me out. And whether he used policy, politics, or plain old pettiness, he was going to try. What he didn't know was that I'd already lived through worse. And I don't go down swinging. I go down documenting. The first heads rolled the Monday after Marcus got his corporate ID badge. He didn't even know where the bathroom was yet, but he already had a talent optimization strategy in motion. Fancy phrase for layoffs. He sat in the all-hands like a smug undertaker, talking about right-sizing for focus and eliminating velocity drag. Translation? Half the customer success team got axed before lunch. By Thursday, he'd reassigned 3 project leads and renamed our product pods with military lingo like strike teams. It was like watching a startup reenact a midlife crisis in real time. At first, I tried to rationalize it. I told myself new VPs always swing their weight around. He's just marking territory, I whispered to myself, trying not to gag on the scent of Axe body spray and panic. I kept my head down, delivered my roadmap milestones, and told my team to stay steady. But the more I listened to Marcus talk, the more I realized this wasn't a guy trying to build something. This was a guy trying to bulldoze until he saw his reflection in the rubble. Then came the one-on-one that told me everything I needed to know. It was a Thursday afternoon. I'd just finished leading a product strategy session that went well. Like, really well. Even the usually cynical lead engineer had given me a rare thumbs-up emoji. I walked into the meeting with Marcus feeling cautiously optimistic, expecting feedback, or at least a vague nod of approval. Instead, he shut his laptop, leaned back in his chair like some tech-age mafia boss, and said, "So, this final project of yours, the MBA thing." I blinked. "Yeah?" He tilted his head. "I read the slide deck you submitted for your hypothetical product pivot." He air-quoted the word hypothetical like it owed him money. "You do know it's dangerously close to the stuff we've been discussing and planning, right?" I sat up a little. I was careful. All data was anonymized, and it's public market framing. No internal files, no proprietary anything. He chuckled. "Come on, Sarah. Don't insult me. You think a board member wouldn't see that and raise a brow? You're not learning anything useful in that program. You're just rebranding our IP and turning it in for a grade." My brain short-circuited for a second. "You think I'm stealing strategy from the company for homework?" "You said it, not me." He grinned, toothy and cold. "Look, I get it. Side hustles are hot right now, but your KPIs are slipping. You're spending too much time being a student and not enough time being a team player." My hands stayed folded, but I felt heat climb up my neck. "My KPIs are fine, ahead of schedule in 2 areas." Marcus shrugged. "Perception is performance. And right now, you look divided. That's not leadership. That's liability." I left that meeting feeling like I'd been slapped with a velvet glove, soft but deliberate. The message was clear. My education wasn't just irrelevant to him, it was offensive, a threat to his narrative. I wasn't the underdog learning to rise. I was the nuisance who dared to evolve without his permission. That night, I reread every email I'd sent in the past 3 months. I double-checked the permissions on my Google Drive. I even emailed my professor to confirm that the case study I submitted met all academic ethics standards. His reply was instant. "Absolutely. No violations, Sarah. It was exemplary." I stared at that word, exemplary, and felt a tight knot settle in my chest, because the more I proved I was playing by the rules, the more Marcus seemed hell-bent on rewriting them. That's when the whisper campaign started. Suddenly, people were asking me in the break room, "Hey, is it true you're leaving for academia?" Or, "How's the job search going?" Like I'd been walking around with a soon-to-be-fired sticky note on my back. Someone even asked if I'd taken a TA position. A TA, as if I'd go through all that work to grade someone else's half-baked group project. I smiled through it, but I knew where the rumors started. Marcus wasn't trying to coach me. He was trying to undermine me. Slowly, quietly, with just enough plausible deniability to keep HR smiling. At the next product sync, he interrupted me mid-sentence to clarify a metric I'd already explained correctly. Then he reorganized our team's dashboard access, locking me out of tools I'd built. When I flagged the change, he replied, "Oh, must have been a permissions update. No biggie." Like I'd imagined it. The suspicion had stopped being hypothetical. I was being cornered. And the worst part? It wasn't because I'd done anything wrong. It was because I'd done everything right, just without his approval. I still remember the smell in that conference room, burnt coffee, and those god-awful protein bars Marcus kept stocked like we were trapped in a nuclear bunker instead of a WeWork suite. He stood by the whiteboard, arms folded, watching me like I'd just hacked the mainframe instead of turning in a graduate school assignment. My slides weren't even on company servers, but he acted like I'd handed our roadmap to a competitor wrapped in a thank you card. Let's back up. My final project for Strategy 602 was a product pivot case study. The prompt was simple. Take a real business problem, build a theoretical pivot, and analyze the implications. I chose our Q2 disaster. The beta backfire, we called it internally. A new feature rollout that tanked retention for 3 straight weeks and caused 2 enterprise clients to threaten churn. I'd lived that chaos, soothed those clients, and led the war room that fixed the mess. So yeah, I knew it better than anyone. But for the project, I stripped it bare. No names, no logos, no internal tools, no timeline clues. Just a hypothetical B2B startup in the project management space navigating a bad launch. I even ran it by Professor Liu, twice. She said I handled it with clinical precision, and that it was a model case for ethical academic synthesis. She asked if she could share it with future classes. I said sure, as long as it stayed anonymous. I was proud of it. Not because it was brilliant, but because I turned pain into progress. That's what real work teaches you, how to metabolize mistakes into momentum. Marcus didn't see it that way. I don't know how he got his hands on it. Maybe someone in my cohort leaked it. Maybe he stalked the academic forums. Maybe he just guessed. But the next week, he pulled me into a check-in that felt more like a deposition. So, he said, tapping his keyboard without looking at me, you published a paper about our Q2 crisis. It wasn't published, I said. It was a course submission. And it wasn't about us. It was a composite scenario. He looked up. Come on, Sarah. We both know it was thinly veiled. No proprietary data, no identifiable references, and I confirmed with the ethics board. He smiled like a crocodile watching a deer try to argue with gravity. I should report you for leaking strategy. That phrase hit me like a shovel. Not, this feels inappropriate, or I'm concerned about overlap. Leaking strategy. Like I was some kind of mole, like I'd stuck a flash drive in the server room and sprinted across the border. My heart was pounding, but I kept my voice even. You're welcome to escalate it, I said, but I'll forward the ethics clearance along with the case file and our communication thread. He leaned forward, elbows on the table. Just know this isn't how loyalty looks, Sarah. Leadership pays attention to alignment. I nodded slowly. And retaliation is a great look for leadership too, right? His smile tightened, and that was the last real thing he said before dismissing me with a wave, like a waitress who got the order wrong. As I walked out, I didn't feel vindicated. I felt watched. I realized then that Marcus didn't care about the rules. He cared about control. He wanted a scalp, and I'd just given him the excuse he was waiting for, even if it was fabricated from ego and caffeine rage. That night, I went home and backed up everything. I exported emails, Slack threads, Jira comments. I saved voice memos from team syncs, even the ones where he joked about business school being just expensive ego yoga. I started keeping a log, date, time, comment, behavior. I wasn't planning a lawsuit. I was just tired of feeling powerless. Documentation was armor, and I was done walking into ambushes unarmed. What gutted me most wasn't the veiled threats or the smirking innuendo. It was the shift I felt in the team. People stopped looping me in. Design started getting approvals directly from him. A junior PM, bless her heart, quietly asked me if I was transitioning out. The rumors were spreading faster than truth ever could, but I kept showing up, kept delivering. Every sprint closed, every OKR on track. If I was going to be exiled, it wasn't going to be for anything I'd actually done wrong. He could spin whatever story he wanted, but the receipts, they were mine. I didn't know yet what I'd do with them, but I knew I wasn't the one who should be scared. He was. It happened on a Tuesday. Always a Tuesday. The kind of day that starts with stale bagels in the break room and ends with your entire career tossed into a corporate shredder wrapped in a legal disclaimer. I got the invite at 9:07 a.m. Sharp subject line, urgent HR discussion. Today, aired 11 Akkarn. No details, no context. Just that creeping tone that says, wear clean clothes, you're about to be erased. The walk to HR felt like a funeral procession for someone I didn't know until now was me. The admin gave me a pity smile as I passed, like she'd been told to act natural, but forgot what that looked like. I opened the door to the glass-walled conference room, and there they were, Janice from HR, notepad in hand, and Marcus already seated, legs crossed like he'd been waiting for a movie to start. He didn't look up when I walked in, just tapped his pen against his wrist like a metronome counting down my exit. Sarah, Janice started, voice laced with artificial sympathy. Thank you for joining on short notice. Didn't think it was optional, I said, sliding into the chair without looking at Marcus. She cleared her throat and launched into it. We've conducted a review of your academic activities, and after internal discussions with leadership. She nodded vaguely in Marcus's direction, like he was some divine oracle. We've determined that your MBA program presents a conflict of interest with your current role. I blinked. A conflict. Yes, she said, flipping through her printed notes as if the paper gave her spine. The overlap between your coursework and your product duties creates a potential breach of confidentiality, and as such, we've made the difficult decision to terminate your employment effective immediately. I just stared. Not because I didn't see it coming. I did. I just couldn't believe they were actually going through with it. On that basis. No performance issues, no misconduct. Just the audacity of learning something without asking for Marcus's permission first. Marcus finally spoke. You're lucky I'm not suing you, honestly. That case study of yours was skating the edge of IP theft. His voice had that smug, faux legal tone men like him perfected after 2 seasons of Billions and Half a TED Talk. I turned to him, and for a second, the rage rose up, hot and electric, ready to boil over. But it didn't. It froze. Crystallized into something colder, cleaner, useful. Understood, I said. That was it. No begging, no speech. Just one word. I stood up, smoothed my blazer, collected the folder I hadn't brought anything in, and walked out. The silence behind me was thick with confusion. They'd expected a scene. I gave them theater curtains and an empty stage. Back at my desk, I took 5 minutes to gather the essentials. Coffee mug, USB charger, a single sticky note that read, "Don't let idiots make you small." No farewell Slack messages, no dramatic post, just a quiet export of my personal files, a final look at the product dashboard I'd built, and then I signed out. By 12:15, I was back on the sidewalk, watching the glass building behind me reflect the sky like nothing had happened inside. I sat on a bench across the street and opened my laptop. Forwarded 3 key files to my personal email, meeting notes, the ethics clearance, and a certain Slack thread where Marcus casually implied that MBAs were vanity degrees for people too soft for real leadership. He'd tagged me in that one. Real classy. Then I opened my exit interview form. Typed like a stenographer possessed. I didn't editorialize. I quoted. Verbatim. The threats, the smear, the final meeting. I included context, dates, names. I answered every question HR had the nerve to ask. Last prompt said, "Do you feel the company supported your professional development?" I wrote, "No, but they did teach me one hell of a capstone lesson." And then, as if fate were waiting in the wings, my phone buzzed. A message from Professor Liu. "Just checking in. How did it go? Heard something strange from another cohort member. Call me when you can." That's when it clicked. That the real damage hadn't been done to me. It had been done by Marcus. To the wrong network, the wrong program, the wrong professor. I stared at that message, heart steady, thoughts clear. I wasn't going to fight back with tears or tweets or lawsuits. No, I was going to let the truth walk into the right inbox and watch it burn politely. The HR platform they used for the exit interview was one of those beige, outdated interfaces with loading times that felt like a dare. The kind of software designed to make quitting feel like a slow bleed instead of a clean cut. I logged in from home that night, lit a candle for ambiance, poured a glass of wine that tasted like revenge aged in stainless steel, and stared at the first prompt. What led to your departure? For a second, I hovered over the keyboard, unsure how honest I wanted to be. But then I remembered Marcus's face. That smug, carnivorous smile as he said I was lucky he didn't sue me. And something in me clicked into place. Not rage, not sadness. Just clarity. So I told the truth. Plain, clinical, and ice cold. I was informed by leadership that my participation in a part-time MBA program constituted a conflict of interest. When asked for clarification on how my academic pursuits interfered with my responsibilities, I was told that my course project, an anonymized, ethics-cleared case study, was tantamount to stealing company strategy for school. I made sure to quote Marcus exactly. Then I moved to the next question. Do you feel leadership supported your growth and development? Answer. Not after Marcus Benson was appointed VP of Product. Prior to his arrival, I was encouraged to pursue my MBA and was even featured in internal communications as an example of ambition and leadership potential. After his arrival, I was repeatedly mocked, undermined, and accused, without basis, of academic misconduct and IP theft. All because I chose to continue learning. Third prompt. Would you recommend this company to a friend? I simply wrote, Not unless they're illiterate and enjoy being gaslit by insecure middle managers who fear educated women. I clicked submit. No flourish, no mic drop, just silence. Then I opened Gmail. New message. To Professor Mei Liu. Subject, clarification requested. Academic boundaries. I kept it simple. Attached the full exit interview. Wrote 2 lines above it. Hi, Professor Liu. As you were kind enough to review and clear my final project, I wanted to share the outcome. This is what was said to me by my former employer. Would appreciate your professional opinion on whether any of this constitutes academic overreach or breach. No bitterness, no anger, just a clean delivery of fact. What I didn't mention, because I didn't need to, was that Professor Liu sat on the advisory board of 3 VC firms. One of them happened to be the lead investor in my now former company. I knew this not because I was stalking anyone, but because she'd mentioned it casually in a seminar, during a lesson on governance failures in high-growth startups. I remember her words like gospel. Watch how they treat the people who leave. That's where the culture really lives. I hit send. And then I waited. There's a strange stillness after you make a move like that. It's not victory. It's not vengeance. It's something else. Like the moment before thunder hits, when the sky holds its breath and the birds disappear. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt precise. The next morning, I slept in. Took a long walk. Breathed like I hadn't in months. No Slack pings, no Jira alerts, no anxiety running background processes in my skull. Just the slow, satisfying silence of letting the truth go free. By noon, I had a reply. From Professor Liu. 1 line. Understood. I'll raise this with the appropriate committee. And beneath that, a forwarded message chain I wasn't supposed to see, but she hadn't deleted the metadata. A CC to another professor. A CC to the board ethics liaison for one of her VC firms. My former company's name in the subject line. I stared at it for a while. Then I closed my laptop. Not because I was done, but because finally they were just beginning. The email went out at 8:42 a.m. Not from me, not from Professor Liu, but from an assistant dean at the university's Office of Academic Integrity. It was polite, professional, and terrifying if you knew how to read between the lines. The kind of message that doesn't threaten, it invites clarification. And when institutions like that invite anything, it's because they already have the receipts. I didn't know what it said, not exactly, but I knew the rhythm. A request for insight. A gentle inquiry into external pressures placed upon enrolled students pursuing advanced degrees. A phrase I'd seen once before during a case study about a law student who was terminated by a white shoe firm for writing a paper on systemic bias in firm culture. The school had escalated it to the American Bar Association. The law firm lost half its incoming class the following year. By noon, things started happening. The Slack channels from my old company, where I still had passive notification access, thanks to an overlooked integration with my personal device, started pinging differently. Messages weren't flowing. Threads about Q4 priorities and product refinement objectives sat unanswered. A post from the VP of marketing that normally would have triggered 20 emojis sat untouched. The company hive had gone mute. Then a quiet change. Marcus's calendar link on the internal site suddenly redirected to page not found. I didn't celebrate. Not yet. Instead, I made a pot of coffee, sat by the window, and opened LinkedIn. I watched his thought leader activity slow to a crawl. The guy who posted about ruthless prioritization every Wednesday hadn't posted in 48 hours. His last entry was some drivel about earning trust through operational excellence. Ironic, considering the trust he'd so expertly incinerated in a single conference room ambush. The next breadcrumb arrived that afternoon, via a friend still inside the company. Not gossip, not theory, a screenshot. The company founder, Greg, had received a flagged email from the firm's lead investor, a partner at a fund called Ironroot Ventures. The subject line read, Potential academic retaliation, governance practices review requested. The body, as shared with me, was as blunt as it was surgical. Greg, we've received concerning information from one of our academic partners involving a terminated employee, Sarah Halston. There appears to be documentation indicating retaliatory behavior from your VP of Product in response to her participation in an accredited academic program. We need to discuss governance practices immediately. Regards, A. Lamont, General Partner, Ironroot Ventures. Now, for context, Ironroot wasn't just any investor. They were the institutional backbone, The firm that got Greg his second round after a bridge loan fiasco nearly folded the company 2 years ago. They didn't micromanage, but when they did speak, you listened. Their board seat was quiet, present, and heavy with power. I'd only met Lamont once, briefly, at a holiday mixer. He asked thoughtful questions. He didn't like showboats. Marcus was a showboat. The minute Lamont put that concern in writing, it was no longer an internal matter. It was risk, reputational risk, legal risk, funding risk. And Greg? Greg was risk-averse in the way rich men with inherited startups tend to be, heroic until the checks get nervous. That evening, I got another message from my friend inside. No joke, Marcus just vanished from the org chart. I stared at that for a long time, because it didn't feel like victory. Not yet. It felt like the first domino. You have to understand, this wasn't just about me anymore. Something bigger had cracked open. The issue wasn't whether I'd plagiarized or violated some imagined NDA. The issue was that someone in power had used their position to punish education. Publicly. Documentedly. And that touches nerves way beyond any startup's four walls. This wasn't just a corporate misstep. It was an ethics liability. Compliance had just met academia. And academia doesn't forget. The investor call was supposed to be routine. Quarterly update, clean slides, some backpatting over customer acquisition metrics, maybe a few tense questions about burn rate, but nothing outside the usual ballet of startup theater. At least, that's what the founder thought when he dialed in from his home office, collared shirt on top, sweatpants below, probably expecting a soft lob from Ironroot Ventures and the rest of the board. Instead, he got a 47-second silence after his opening remarks, followed by Lamont's voice. Cool, unshaken, surgical. Before we dive into growth metrics, I want to raise a concern flagged by our academic compliance advisor. Pause. Involving a terminated employee, Sarah Halston. I wasn't on that call, obviously, but I heard about it within the hour. Word travels fast when billion-dollar money goes cold. My name wasn't just a whisper in HR emails anymore. It had climbed the marble steps and was echoing in the boardroom. Lamont continued, calmly but deliberately. We've been made aware of language used by your leadership that described a student's coursework, submitted under formal university supervision, as, quote, stealing IP. This characterization was made in writing. The student in question was enrolled in a program partnered with our Academic Ethics Consortium, of which we are a contributing member. You could practically hear the founder's mouth drying up over Zoom. I need clarity, Lamont said. Specifically, who authorized this culture? Not who made the call. Not who signed off. Who authorized this culture? The question went beyond Marcus. It sliced past his smug facade and landed squarely in the lap of the man who'd hired him, praised him, and blindly let him run a department like a paranoid king with a god complex. From what I was told, the founder, Greg, blinked into the camera like a man watching his own eulogy scroll across the ticker at the bottom of CNBC. Then he tried to pivot, mumbled something about misunderstandings and internal reviews. But Lamont didn't let it go. We've spoken with the university. This isn't a minor policy issue. It's reputational. You allowed your VP to characterize a respected graduate program as predatory. Do you understand how that makes us look? That's when legal got looped in. Not after. Right then. Greg pulled in his general counsel mid-call. Not to defend the company. No. To start insulating himself. Because suddenly it wasn't just about me. It was about them. About what they'd allowed to happen. About the kind of ecosystem they'd cultivated, where someone pursuing knowledge was treated like a corporate mole. Where ambition was acceptable until it threatened a man's ego. Inside sources told me Marcus tried to defend himself. Sent an internal memo claiming he'd been misquoted, that his comments were taken out of context. But the problem was, context was the problem. He didn't just say it. He wrote it. He signed off on documents that implied my coursework was unethical. He attached his own name to narratives designed to discredit me. And those narratives were now being dissected by lawyers who didn't care about his posturing. They cared about liability. One line from his Slack message, still preserved in my inbox, got quoted aloud on the investor call. If she wants to play academic, she can go find a university that likes plagiarism. Greg reportedly asked him, mid-meeting, "Did you really write that?" And Marcus? Marcus just stammered. That's when he knew. It was no longer his story to tell. His spin had run out of thread. I got a text from a former colleague that night. No context, no greeting. Just a screenshot of the company's internal comms update. Effective immediately, Marcus Benson is no longer with the company. We thank him for his contributions and wish him well in future endeavors. Classic template for someone who just became a walking HR hazard. I stared at the message for a long time. Not out of triumph, out of disbelief. Because I never imagined a term paper, written at midnight, fueled by stress and microwave leftovers, would end up in a VC's inbox and shatter the career of a man who thought himself untouchable. But here we were. And the most beautiful part? I didn't have to shout. I just had to quote him. The email came at 3:16 p.m., nestled between a Costco promo and a spam message claiming I'd inherited Bitcoin from a Nigerian uncle. No subject, no sender, just a silent BCC drop into my inbox from a confidential thread I was never supposed to see. But someone wanted me to see it. A ghost in the machine with a conscience. Or maybe just a front row seat to the implosion and a flair for theatrics. I clicked it open and read the first line 3 times. Per Clause 9.2 of the investment agreement, Ironroot Ventures is advising suspension of Series C disbursement until the completion of an academic integrity review involving recent leadership actions. Legal to Greg. CC'd to Lamont. Not a discussion. A notice. Clause 9.2. Reputational risk. I remembered it vaguely from the founder's AMA on funding terms a year ago. Back then, he'd bragged about how Ironroot trusted him so much they'd signed a light-touch governance clause. But that clause? That was the landmine buried under his confidence. The one that detonated the moment he let Marcus weaponize my MBA transcript like it was a stolen nuclear code. The rest of the email was brutal in its calmness. Until further review, we recommend pausing all high-level hiring, freezing executive comp adjustments, and temporarily withholding final approval on strategic roadmap expansions. Media engagement should be routed through legal. Translation. You've embarrassed us. Sit down, shut up, and pray we don't pull the plug entirely. 2 hours later, Marcus was summoned into a closed-door board meeting. My source inside said he looked calm at first. Jacket on, phone in hand. That same irritating swagger like he was about to run a panel on resilience under pressure. He never came out. I mean that literally. No return to his desk, no Slack ping, not even a wish you well blast from HR. He was scrubbed like a virus patch update. Calendar cleared, email auto-forwarding activated, LinkedIn scrubbed by morning, the human equivalent of hitting Ctrl+Alt+Delete on a career. And Greg? Greg switched tones like a man flipping a coin in a lightning storm. Gone was the confident founder persona, the man who once said, "Startups aren't democracies," during a budget meeting. Suddenly, he was a humble servant of team cohesion. He sent a company-wide email titled, "A Time to Reflect," filled with phrases like listening culture, shared accountability, and lessons learned. It read like a confessional written by ChatGPT trained on HR memos and self-help books. The next day, a follow-up memo went out to the press. Not about me, of course, but carefully worded damage control. Leadership transition, alignment with values, ongoing partnership with our investors and academic partners. They never said my name, but I could see it in every line of that sanitized paragraph. I was the smudged fingerprint on their glass house, and they were polishing like hell. Meanwhile, a recruiter I hadn't heard from in 2 years sent me a LinkedIn message. "Hey, heard you're in transition. Would love to catch up." I didn't reply. Not because I wasn't tempted, but because I was done reacting to this circus. Let them spiral. Let them write apology scripts and hire DEI consultants and pretend this was all a miscommunication. I didn't need to clarify anything. They'd already clarified it for me. And now the boardroom was prepped. The house lights were dimming. All that remained was the final quote, the one Marcus thought he could bury under smirks and calendar invites. It was coming. And this time, everyone would hear it. The boardroom smelled like cold coffee, toner, and panic, the holy trinity of a startup in freefall. I wasn't there, obviously, but I got the play-by-play later from someone who was. She said the tension in the room was so thick you could have repurposed it as acoustic foam. Everyone came in dressed for war, except Greg. Greg came in looking like a man who'd just been told his house was built on a sinkhole, and the sinkhole had a lawyer. The general counsel was already seated when they arrived, pages spread out in front of him like surgical tools. At the top of the pile? My exit interview. Printed, highlighted, tabbed, annotated. I imagined it sitting there like a loaded gun, quiet, patient, indisputable. He didn't warm them up, didn't ease into it, just cleared his throat and said, "To begin, I'll read directly from the termination documentation provided by the VP of Product regarding Ms. Halston." A pause, a rustle of fabric. Then he read it aloud. "Your MBA is stealing company time." He let the sentence hang. No follow-up, no explanation, just the quote, naked and damning. My name suddenly, not a whisper anymore, but a reckoning. Lamont, the Iron Root partner, leaned back in his chair, crossed one leg over the other, and said evenly, "If that's how your leadership treats continued education, this funding round's dead in the water." Not, "We're considering our options." Not, "We're evaluating alignment." Dead in the water. Greg, according to my source, didn't speak for a full 7 seconds, which, in a room like that, might as well be a scream. He glanced at the legal team, then at the empty chair where Marcus used to sit, then at the projection screen, which still bore the last vestiges of their Series C roadmap. By the end of that meeting, the board had voted to suspend funding engagements. Any open tranches were frozen. PR was instructed to prepare a statement about cultural recalibration. And the company's site? Marcus's profile disappeared before sunset, not even archived, like he never existed. Like the man who once told me I wasn't leadership material with a divided focus had been deleted by the same ego he built his title on. That night, while they were cleaning up the wreckage and trying to find a way to spin systemic insecurity into a growth opportunity, I got an email. From the university. Subject, Curriculum Integration Notification. It opened, "Dear Ms. Halston, we're pleased to inform you that your Strategy 602 capstone submission has been selected for inclusion in the fall curriculum under our new Ethics in Leadership module. Your anonymized case study will be used to prompt discussion on retaliation, organizational culture, and professional development pathways. You will be credited as a contributing consultant in the module guide." I read it twice. Then again. Just to be sure I hadn't imagined it. No lawsuit, no press conference, no revenge manifesto, just vindication. Cool. Documented. Educational. I didn't reply right away. Instead, I sat by the window, watching the city breathe. Cars passed. People walked dogs. Someone played jazz too loud on a fourth-floor balcony. The world kept turning. And me? I wasn't angry. I wasn't even tired. I was still. Because in the end, I didn't burn that bridge. I just let them build it with dry kindling and ego grease. And when it collapsed, I simply watched the fire flicker from a distance. Warm. Bright. Useful.